Welcome everyone. What a beautiful day. It's a nice sunny early morning spring day. It's supposed to get into the 60s today. Currently it's in the around 40, I guess. Not too bad, but DIY home-built trusses. I've done I don't know, 15 or 20 sets of them over 30, 35 years. There's definitely a technique to them that if you're going to build them, they're very important steps that you need to do to follow to make sure each truss is exactly the same. Because if you don't, when you put the trusses on and you look down through, so you have the trusses all like that, and you look down through there or at the peak, if they're off like this, your roof sheathing is going to be like this, and it won't line up, and it'll be miserable. So it's really important to get started with them correctly. Also, there are factors of loading that you need to consider. What type of lumber, and typically I use a plywood wooden gusset mending plate to hold the pieces of like the webbing and so on, and the top cord and the bottom cord. Those are the main parts of a truss. I'm going to go inside and build a model truss. But first, I wanted to show you some that we built over the past 5 or 6 years. I think I had 3 different sets. The first set was for a mudroom that we were going to build. So we had the house, going to build a mudroom, and then the garage. So the mudroom needed its own. They were small trusses, and typically you can build small trusses so much cheaper than buying them store-bought. So this first set of trusses was like 12 foot, and there was only 4 of them. One that would go against the house, one against the garage, and then 2 in the middle. And so it's really a basic top cord, 1 bottom cord, 12 feet. I think it was maybe 14 feet long, including a foot overhang on each end. The mudroom itself was 12 feet. And then the gussets to hold them together. And then there's just 1 vertical, which left about a 7-foot span from the peak to the bottom, to the rafter tail, which is fine. It was going to have a metal roof, so there wouldn't be much of a snow load. It would come off almost immediately, mostly, but it would shed the snow quickly, so you wouldn't have to worry about it. The second set that I'll show you is of a little workshop that we built. It was 16 by 24, and those were slightly larger. We used, I think on that one we used maybe 18-foot bottom cord, 2x4, and then the top cords came out of like a 2x4 10, and then there was just 1 webbing in the middle, because it's just not, it's more, 2x4 is strong enough to handle that. If you look at a lot of store-bought trusses, you'll see a spacing on the top cord between the webbing when it comes down from the peak, comes down and back up. That space is sometimes around 8 feet or so. And then it starts another one, depends on how long the trusses are. And then the third set of trusses we built was a 24-foot wall-to-wall garage with a foot overhang on each end. And that one, because of the size, I didn't have a trailer to ship it over the road, so we built it in 2 sections. And then when we got together, we got to the job site, we nailed the mending plates at the peak and wherever the webbing came for 1/2 of it on the bottom. So that's how we did that one. We've built a few other oddball ones, a salt box style that had a 45-degree front and a 22.5-degree back. And it's just a matter of figuring out the degrees, the angles for the cuts. So I hope you enjoy this quick little shot of trusses that we've built. Chad and Dan helped me with those. That's pretty cool. Okay. I have all the pieces cut for the outside, the top cord and the bottom cord. I want to go over there and put them together. So let's go take a look over there. It's some of the twistedest lumber I've ever seen, but because we're screwing everything together, we should be able to straighten it out quite easily. I'm going to stand them up so you can just get an idea of how all four look beside each other. Hopefully they line up. You can see that it's twisted right here. This one is twisted up. We'll straighten that out. You can see we have one upright in the center. This is our template truss. We're going to make all of them match that. The bottom is straight, two tops. Top cords are straight. And we have one upright in the center. That'll be plenty strong for what we're doing for this little mud room. And again, we'll cut plywood gussets. Those are just little rectangular pieces that will go at each joint. Holds it all together really well. Hey, it's raining a little bit. We won't let that dampen our spirits though, eh? Unloading the trusses, we're ready to start putting walls onto the attached for the mudroom. We'll get those put on first. Okay, so we have the walls up. Next we're going to do the trusses on the mudroom. You can see the flashing going up there. We've got it up on one side already. They're fitting the other side, and then we'll tuck a truss in underneath that. So in this garage, we're going to build the trusses, not in this garage. Well, we're building them in the garage, but for another job. We've pre-cut most of the parts. We're still cutting some. I'll just show you how they're going together. The building is 24 feet, so it's having this 12-inch overhang, and putting the webbing in. It'll assemble just like that. We'll put plywood gussets at each intersection there, sized appropriately, and then to the job site. So the good share of the gussets cut. We're about ready to start putting it together. We made half trusses. We're going to assemble them, put the two halves together on site, and then set them up. We're at the job site now. We've just poured the slab. We brought the trusses up, and they're in two sections. You can kind of see them there. They're in half. So now we're bringing them over here, nailing them together. All we have to do is nail the gussets in the center. The mending plates. They have a few different names. All right, I've gotten started on just a scale truss. This is 1 inch equals 2 feet. So this bottom cord, that's the bottom of the truss, is it's 49 inches, or what's that? So it's 26 feet to scale. The reason being, we're going with a 1 foot overhang on each end. Another thing to allow for is when you put it, you'll be putting a subfascia on here, and then a fascia out there as well. This piece, this top cord, I'm going to be cutting this the peak is 22.5 degrees, and now the bottom I'm going to cut it 22.5, and then I'm going to put it on the chop saw and cut it this way 22.5, so that this part will actually be 67.5 degrees. I'll show you that after I cut it. It'll be more clear. So that's where we're at right now, and then we'll fit in the webbing. So I'm going to go cut this one and this one to length, and then do the other bevel, the other cut. So that's where I want to cut it. That'll be the exact length. Save the cutoff for webbing, of course. This is where cutting really small things makes it a little more difficult. If it was a full 2x4 and I wanted to cut that 67.5 degree angle, I would typically draw a line on here, have that at 22.5, or have it over here. Either way, I guess it would be better, safer over there, so that I could cut that long angle coming back. This would be the top cord going up. Cut that long angle, but it's at 22.5. But I've turned, my saw doesn't go 67.5 degrees this way, so I have to make it up. So I would normally, out on that end of a 2x4, put up a support to hold it steady And I would also, once I found where this was going to be, because you'll be making, if it's a 24-foot garage, there'll be 13 trusses, 26 pieces. So you're going to be doing a lot. So you want to set it up like a template so that they're all exactly the same. So I'm going to have to cut this angle. I'll mark it with a square and cut it on the table saw. It's a little slower, but for the sake of illustration, that's what I'll do. I'm going to well, I guess I can do them both the same, because then that'll work fine. So if this was the fence on the chop saw and you were able to do it on the chop saw, you just bring it up against that, make sure it's a good angle this way, and then you can draw a line. I'll be kind of doing it upside down. So it would look like that. So we're going to cut that part off. And I might as well do them both this way. It's easier since I'm having to use a table saw, it's easier to do it this way. Okay, so I'll go over and rip that on the table saw, and I'll be right back. Okay, I cut these out on the table saw. It's kind of a little more difficult to do, but it works. So now I'm going to nail these. Not really a good way to do it, but I'm going to do it. The finish nailer. Just for illustration purposes, really. I'll snip that nail off. It's sticking through. Ugh. So that's a really good fit. All the joints are nice and tight. So normally, again, if I'm building this in two pieces, it would be cut here so that I can ship it in two sections and then put it together on site. So it would mean that there would be mending plates or gussets here, one on each side, as well as up here, both sides. Unless it's the gable ends, which there's almost always two, so they would only have the mending plate gusset on just one side, so that this sits up tight to the house, if there's an existing house. Or if you put the mending plates on this side, this would be the gable end where you sheathe up by there. Also, gable ends would typically have vertical spacing every 2 feet. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to do a regular truss. But they would be spaced every 2 feet. And when you start the measurement to do the gable ends, start from where the wall is going to be. Don't start your layout from here, because when you start putting sheathing on, sheathing is 4 feet wide or 8 feet wide, whichever way you put it on. When you go 8 feet from here, you'll be okay, but when you get to the other end, you're going to be off on your measurement. As well as this way, the peak gable end web will be dead center of the peak, and that's always preferable. Okay, so now we'll work on the webbing. So I threw a finish nail in. I threw a finish nail in there to hold this together for illustration purposes, because this is so small, it's a little hard to work with. So if you look down through there, make sure you can see that. It looks good and straight. This one has a slight bow to it, but look at that. Look at that. That's got a big bow to it. That's why I secured the top. I'll show you why. We need to get this straight. So I'm probably I guess for here, actually this is a little easier. We're going to have webbing There won't be one directly coming straight down. Although there could be. It wouldn't hurt. You could do that. And then one coming this way. You know what? I'm going to do that. I'm going to put one in like straight up and down. But in order to do that, I need to find out what this measurement is. And this has to be straightened out. So I'll put a screw there, and I'm going to flex that down till it's straight. Perfect. Okay. So now we know that this is a 22.5 degree cut. So to do this, we're going to have to do a double 22.5. So I'll cut that now, then we'll be able to mark that. With the first truss, you want to make sure you have it absolutely perfect. And then the rest of the trusses would build right on top of this. Okay, so that's good. We can actually remove these now. See, that's nice and straight. So now we'll put some webbing going this way. I like to use 45-degree angles when I can, just for symmetry. It seems to work really well. So I'll cut a couple of those. Good, those all look nice. Then typically, the biggest strength is in triangles. So that's where you try to do everything in triangles. This one is going to be, let's see, square to 22.5. All right, good. And good. Quite often they will also, a lot of it depends on snow load, what area you're in. If you're down south, snow doesn't build up. Up north, it builds up pretty substantially. Sometimes they'll run another one down to have it end down on top of the wall. So it would be another one. Cut at that angle so it's nice and snug. It almost mirrors right along with this one. They'll just double that up. I think that's called a fink truss. I think so. I think it is. Okay, that pretty much wraps it up. So there it is, one truss. Just like that. So the key, the biggest thing is when you make multiple trusses, use one as a template. I always lay it down. You can stand it up, but if you wiggle it, if it's not perfect this way, if it's off a little bit, then you're going to be off. I'll also leave on the template one, I'll leave all the gusset mending plates off, so I'm as close to this as possible. Sometimes I'll put stops at different points, and that will help. A lot of different stops that you can add on there, and that really helps a lot. So hope you enjoyed this quick little video on how I build trusses at home. You may have, if you're doing them, based on this, you may want to just check with your local building codes to see what their requirements are for loading to achieve a certain load value. One thing you can do is contact a lumberyard and tell them what you want, and they will give you, typically when they get a quote, they will have a truss design So you can look at it and say, oh, that's what, that's the spacing that I want. So that's kind of helpful sometimes. So there you go. Alrighty. Leave a comment, hit the like button, share it. Become a subscriber if you're not a subscriber. And above all, be nice and have a great day.